Let's take a look at the box office from this past week. Total, actually, I've decided I'm not going to give the total domestic box office anymore because I don't think anyone cares enough about that. So, we're going to just take a look here at the box. This is really going well, this episode here. So the biggest new film this past week was the John Wick spinoff, Ballerina, from the world of John Wick at number 3. You love that corporate-y, from the world of John Wick, right? Opened around $24.5 million, which was below the projections, even the lowest end of those projections, which, again, I was not surprised by. I feel like the John Wick brand has never been as strong as people think it is. It's a cult classic, right? But the thing about cult classics is they're not popular classics, right? They have a very niche, limited fan base. And I feel like, they've done 4 John Wick movies. Does anyone really care all that much about a spin-off? Not even with John Wick. Even if it was John Wick 5, I would be doubtful of the film's ability to, perform really, really well. But this isn't even John Wick 5. It's from the world of John Wick, Ballerina. Critics were kind of, mixed on it. Audiences seem to like it well enough. But again, the real tell will be, can it kind of hold week after week? And considering there's so many other, I don't even want to say action films, but you have Thunderbolts, still here in the top 10, right? Dropping from 6th to 9th place now, but it's in its 6th week. Critics liked that one a lot more. Audiences liked that. It's still chugging along. It finally crossed over into profitability, I think, a week or 2 ago. But things like Thunderbolts are still here. Mission Impossible is here. So I feel like Ballerina just doesn't have a place in this market right now. This brings its worldwide total, though, to 50 million, 50 and a half. But it cost 90 million to make. So this is still very much a negative return. And, again, maybe those international audiences will help. As you can see here, more than half of its worldwide box office is coming from overseas, right? The only other new movie here was Dan Evil Eye at number 10. This is from my understanding, this is just a episode compilation of 3 episodes of the newest season of an anime. And again, with releases like this, it's interesting when they break into the top 10. And also, interestingly, most of its worldwide box office is coming from the United States. Because typically when these things release, they've already been playing internationally, particularly in Japan. So this will just kind of be like the icing on the cake. But again, this is still kind of icing on the cake because, it's a television anime first. And this is really just to kind of get the word out, kind of build more brand awareness, and just squeeze every dollar out of fans who would have watched it on TV anyway, but are willing to pay extra to see it on the big screen, and they'll probably still watch it when it airs on TV, right? But this top 10 is more or less where we left it last week. Lilo and Stitch obviously still here at number 1 in its 3rd week now. $57 million for the week. For its 3rd week. That's really strong, right? It had a 57% drop from the previous week. But, again, this is already a mammothly successful endeavor for Disney. Bringing in, we're looking at almost 700, I think more than 750 million worldwide, off of just a $100 million budget. So, Disney, the last year has been Disney being rewarded for doing the bare minimum, right? Deadpool and Wolverine, Moana 2, Inside Out 2, Lilo and Stitch. These just continuations of, and not even good continuations. I have not seen Moana 2 or this Lilo and Stitch movie, but I did see Inside Out 2. And I'm not a big fan of the original Inside Out, but this one was also middling for me. So Disney, but they've all 4 of the films that I've mentioned here, that Disney's put out that I've pointed to have all done incredibly well. So of course Disney is going to learn the wrong lessons from this. You would think that they would learn after the failure of Snow White, okay, we need to actually we can't just become this echo chamber. But I think the lesson that they're learning is, we could be an echo chamber. We just have to make sure we're picking the right properties, to be an echo chamber for, right? Snow White, who gives a shit? Lilo and Stitch, people love, right? That's probably their thinking here. It's not an issue of the strategy as a whole, but rather like how, like what films they're implementing the strategy with. Fuck this new Lilo and Stitch movie. From my understanding, it completely undermines the whole thematic purpose of the original film. You know, I'm fine with remakes and reimaginings changing things about the source material, but when they change again the core thematic idea, and replace it with something not nearly as well thought out or complex or nuanced, but very boilerplate and just inferior, that's when I have an issue, right? Again, Mission Impossible Final Reckoning is still here at second place in its third week. Again, critics and audiences like this. Critics like this obviously a lot more than Lilo and Stitch. Though I'm surprised it's not higher. You would, based off film Twitter, you would think that this Mission Impossible movie would have like 100% critic score. They're like, this is true cinema. But I think people forget it's also just like a very entertaining, but nevertheless, it's just like a studio action series, right? With really impressive stunt work by Tom Cruise, right? Worldwide, it's made a little over $450 million, but again, it costs like $400 million to make because they paid the crew through COVID, even when they weren't, when they basically paused production. So this is technically Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 2, but they changed the name because that ended up not doing very well, so they like changed the branding of it. But so again, it's very unlikely that this is going to hit 800 million, which is a shame because again, this is a franchise going back, almost 30 years now. I think it was like the mid 90s that first movie came out, the Brian De Palma movie, right? So for it to end on a note of essentially a financial flop, it's probably a little bit disappointing, but again, I'm sure, nothing is ever truly dead in Hollywood, right? Viviana is putting here in the comments, quoting me, Disney will take the wrong lessons from this, but then she follows up with, but the lesson is follow the money. Exactly, right? But I would also argue it's like, is it the chicken or the egg, right? Do these movies make a lot of money because audiences want this, or do audiences want this because Disney pushes them out and puts all of their marketing weight behind them, right? And I think this is a great, and I'm really glad you make this comment because, just look at something like Sinners here, right? Dropping from 5th to 8th place out of the top 5, but in its 8th frame, still here, this, not independent, but, original, black-led, but black, performers and creatives both in front of and behind the camera, doing so well, right? Critics and audiences love this movie. The legs on this has been a, very consistent week after week after week. It's made over $350 million off of just a $90 million budget. So when you give audiences something original and that's high quality, they will go, right? There has to be a certain level of marketability, right? Like, you're not going to have people go see Citizen Kane. Like, if you make Citizen Kane, that people aren't going to want to go. It's not going to be this, even though it's amazing, at least in my opinion. But, like, as long as you kind of put on, like, the veneer of something, like, more conventional, people will go to these movies. So, yes, follow the money, but I feel like it's like, do they reinforce people's tastes? People's tastes are formed by what they're able, you can't develop your taste culinarily if all you have access to is McDonald's, right? So you can't just say, well, we're giving them McDonald's because that's what they want. It's like, yeah, because they haven't developed their palate because you haven't given them anything else. So again, it's not necessarily like the worst thing in the world. It's just that when their entire financial weight is put behind just a couple tentpole movies that are very generic, and because they're so expensive, they have to make so much. That's the issue, and that's why I always like to put the percent return, because a movie cannot make a lot, but if it didn't cost a lot, it can be financially viable. But when you have a movie cost $400 million, you need to make like 800 just to break even. So in order to make that much money, you have to make a movie, palatable to as many people as possible, and therefore you're taking less creative risk. So it's literally the exact tension between art and commerce, right? Where when you make it so expensive, you are putting yourself in a position where you can't make something really creative or high quality. So that's really unfortunate. Because again, looking like you can again have good percent returns. I mean, look at Final Destination Bloodlines, right? Only cost $50 million, but it's made over $250 million worldwide. So while that pales in comparison to some of these other bigger movies, 400% return, right? Like that is a bigger percent return than Sinners, right? Despite Sinners making more money because Sinners cost more money, right? You know, and it's just a shame that we don't get the opportunity to see different kinds of movies. And I speak nostalgically about a period that was literally like a couple of weeks ago, but there was one week where the top 10 was so diverse. It was like an original film, a sequel, a spin-off, a remake, a re-release of an older movie, a documentary. Like, it was so many different kinds of things, right? And I think that's the big issue with the box office and the American film landscape today, is that, you know, there's just too many, or rather not even too many, there's just not enough, you know, opportunities for different kinds of films to find their niche, and I think that's a shame. Okay, looking ahead to this upcoming week, so I've changed up my upcoming releases format here, where I have another chart, right? I'm not only going to just show the upcoming week, but as far out as I'm able to get predictions on from other sources. So, looking ahead to this specific week, though, we have the How to Train Your Dragon. Speaking of remaking animated films, we have How to Train Your Dragon. It's projected to make around 67 to 100 million. I'm going to put the target around 79. Again, like, the fact that this is going to be one of the bigger films of the summer is just disappointing, especially for a movie like this, because at least, like, the Snow White movie, and even the Lilo and Stitch, for all its faults, like, was not a shot-for-shot remake of the original. At least based off the trailers, this is, like, literally a shot-for-shot remake, which is insane, right? So, the fact that this is going to make so much money when you can literally just watch the animated movie and it's probably going to be better, you know, it's just disappointing because people feel like, oh, it needs to be in live action for it to be validated in some way, right? Vivian also puts in the comments, this is still relevant. People definitely will like what they're given because I don't think anyone asked for a Lilo and Stitch live action remake. Exactly. And also the fact that they even made that speaks to that they're really starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel. Not because a Lilo and Stitch is bad. If anything, it's like one of, if not the best Disney movie. But it's like not the one that's most obvious for a remake, right? So again, no one, and Vivian also puts, revive the brand, sure, but not make it into one of the chain of crappy live action remakes. Exactly. Like, you know, because Lilo and Stitch apparently is very, very popular overseas. So I think a lot of people have theorized that they made this movie as a way to kind of like reinvigorate the brand, sell some more merch, kind of keep that brand alive. It's very, very popular in other parts of the world, particularly Asia, particularly Japan. But anyway, so How to Train Your Dragon. Again, I laid out those projections. Also, we have The Materialists, which is a A24 film from Celine Song, I believe, who did Past Lives, which was a great movie. But apparently this movie, Materialist, isn't getting so great reviews. But I'll wait for my judgment on that until it comes out. It's projected to make around 5 to 13. I'm going to put the target around 9.5 million. Somewhere kind of like in the middle there. Again, smaller fare, but if we just made more smaller movies, you know, we would just be better fed. It would be more nutritious meals. And then you wouldn't have to worry about this one film making a gazillion dollars because you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, right? We also have a Miley Cyrus, not even a documentary, like a visual album movie. Miley Cyrus, Something Beautiful, to accompany her new album. This is coming out on Thursday. Projected to make around 1 to 3 million. I'm going to put the target around 1.7. A little bit closer to that 2 mark, right? Miley Cyrus is interesting that she's kind of like made a comeback like 3 different times. So I don't know where we are in that arc of Miley Cyrus, but I'm always a big fan of some OG Hannah Montana, the Meet Miley Cyrus double side album with Hannah Montana too. I'm really showing both my age and my weirdness that I love early Hannah Montana music. And it's not just nostalgic. Like, I'm like, some of these songs actually slap. And then we also have the Unholy Trinity. This is let me like confirm what this is. Again, it's like one of these like random like cheap action films, Western action films that just has like aging action stars like Pierce Brosnan and Sam Jackson. Again, very, very small projection, only projected to make around 1 to 2 million. I'm gonna put my projection like literally at the bottom, right? At 1 million. And then again, you can see some other films here. Obviously, the biggest one that's coming up in the next couple of weeks is Superman. You know, we're looking at something like $185 million topping those projections. I feel like it's going to be even more. I feel like this is going to be the biggest movie of the summer. I could be wrong though, right? Because we do also have Fantastic Four later in the summer. But this is definitely going to be the biggest film up to that point. For sure. And before I move on, Viviana also writes in the comments, Sinners was phenomenal. Such a big risk, so creative, black leads, great score. It's really a taste of the stuff that we should be getting, not just remakes and continuing franchises. Again, 100% agree that it's just, you know, art is about communication. Sometimes it's very utilitarian, like a sign on the street, but then other times it's about communicating something about the human condition, right? So films are art. Anything humans make is art, right? A chair is art. So when a film is soulless and lifeless, it's just like empty words, right? And where something like Sinners feels like, you know, for better or for worse, because that movie's one of my favorites of the year, but it is kind of messy, but at least it's messy, but there's a person behind it, right? There's someone wrestling with something, right? So again, I really hope I hope and pray that the industry really kind of moves towards, because again, we're still like in this transitional post-COVID, post-mega blockbuster period of like the 2010s. And I think people are like, okay, we're past that. We're past the moment of transition. I think we're still in a moment of transition. That's going to be, you know, if it started during COVID, you know, it could take 10, even 15 years. I'm hoping part of that transition, you see a lot more bigger swings from an industry that is dying, right? And eventually they're going to get to the point, kind of like in the 60s, where they were just kind of like, we don't even know what to do. Here's the keys to the kingdom, all you young, ambitious filmmakers. Just make whatever. And that's how we got the new Hollywood, the Hollywood Renaissance period, right? Wow, what an interesting story. I'm sure you have some thoughts about the topic, so comment below, let me know what you think. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really, really helps people find the channel and makes me feel all warm inside. Until next time, I'm Peter Mancuso. Peace out.